So Matthew Rycroft was the permanent undersecretary, the director general, the boss of the Home Office at a time when a young Royal Marine applicant was murdered by an illegal immigrant in Bournemouth. And the coroner, Rachel Griffin, has decided that a public inquiry into the Home Office failures is not required. Alright guys, I'm going to tell you why I think that's absolute rubbish, and I've got so much information to give you, but we're going to keep it slow time and we're going to make this video very short. Stephen Edgington, who is a world-class young leading journalist, I can't get enough of this boy, he's fantastic, says, so Matthew Rycroft has been the most senior civil servant in the Home Office since March 2020. He's got a massive bonus. He's well into DEI, obviously, they all are, aren't they? That's a bit suspect. And he spends his time meeting officials about trans rights, helping to write race plans for his department. Now, the Home Office, part of which is Border Force, protecting our borders, of course. And I want to tell you how the failures of the Royal Air Force, the failures of Border Force, the failures of the Home Office, and the failures of the British government are all interlinked. Now, before I do that, I want to introduce you to something called the Bonhoeffer Theory of Stupidity. This is so important. So important that we understand two concepts here. The Bonhoeffer Theory of Stupidity. We have more to fear from stupid people than evil ones. And I'm going to talk about why a lot of people in our government are actually more stupid than we realize. When we know something or someone is evil, we can take steps to fight it. With stupidity, it's much more difficult. Dietrich Bonhoeffer argues that stupidity is worse than evil because stupidity can be manipulated and used by evil. He also argues that stupidity tends to go hand in hand with acquiring power. Very important for the next bit I'm going to talk about. That is, being in power means surrender. We surrender our individual critical faculties, known as the Peter Principle, something that was really clear to me when I was in the Royal Air Force for 20 years. It's a concept in management developed by a chap called Lawrence Peter back in 1970, which observes that people in a hierarchy tend to rise to a level of respective incompetence. That's very important. We think these people are in power, must be very clever, but they're in power because they've reached their level of incompetence. Employees promoted based on their success in previous jobs until they reach a level at which they are no longer competent. I'm sure you know people in your workplaces who fit this bill. Now, covering Stephen's story very quickly, I'm just going to refresh you about this a little bit. Afghan illegal migrant smuggled himself into Britain in a lorry 2019, went on to murder an aspiring Royal Marine by the name of Tom Roberts, 21 years old. He was a DJ in Bournemouth. I know about this story because I was in Bournemouth at the time. I was working in some defence company down there as well. Tom was stabbed twice in the chest, I believe, and pretty much died at the scene. An argument over his scooter, 4:30 in the morning. Now, the issue is this illegal immigrant had actually killed two people using an AK-47 back in 2018 in Serbia on his way to the UK. He was referred to Prevent in 2021 as being susceptible to terrorism, but he'd lied about his age. He said he was 40 when he was actually 19. They sent this guy to school with your children, because I haven't got any, and this guy was running around the playground with a knife. Now, they traced him back to links to Norway, Italy. They didn't follow up with any further information. It says about chasing people with a knife and assaulting another child. The mother of Tom Roberts, who had applied to be a Royal Marine, said, I have serious concerns about how the Border Force checks the identity of those arriving in England and whether they are criminals, and how the councils check the age of those claiming to be children. Everything is wrong in this country and will continue to happen again. And then Tom's stepfather says there were so many warning signs that he should have not been here, yet the Home Office did nothing about it. As you said, the Home Office under Matthew Rycroft. Now, interesting thing about the Home Office, as I said, they incorporate Border Force. Now, there's an interesting thing about Border Force. Now, as I said underneath this tweet from Stephen, the spotlight needs shining on these people like Matthew Rycroft, the boss of the Home Office. During the time of this murder's entry to the UK, Paul Lincoln, from 2017 to 2021, was the Director General of UK Border Force in the Home Office, with responsibility for protecting border security and overseeing immigration and customs checks. Now, he's married to Air Commodore Joe Lincoln, Assistant Chief of Staff, Workforce Requirements and Recruiting, who was involved in the discrimination against white men, joining the Royal Air Force back in 2022. This shit's connected. It's connected. We know it's connected, all right? I did a lot of stories on this one. I'll put a video back up at the end here where some of those videos can be seen if you're interested. Now, here's a story then from about a couple of days ago, really. I'm not mentioning this guy's name. There were loads of warning signs, as we've seen. And Rachel Griffin here was the senior coroner for Dorset, who ruled on Wednesday that there was no need for a full inquest in the circumstances surrounding Robert's death. I think the British public would disagree with this. I think the Home Office has let us down massively. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to prove to you that this is actually the incorrect decision and why she's probably gone and made it. Now, something interesting happens when you search for Rachel Griffin. You come up with this firm here, previously Russell & Russell solicitor, who went on to become the youngest senior coroner in the UK. I'll stop you there. The youngest senior coroner in the UK. Now, it says here in the company, honouring International Women's Day. Of course they are. We are proud to share the success story of an amazing previous member on our team to become the youngest senior coroner in England, in Wales. Bolton born and bred Rachel Griffin, etc., etc., etc. Where did she go then? Let's have a look down here. Before taking up her role running the Dorset's coroner office in 2016. She was the coroner, as I said before, that investigated this potential Royal Marines death. So I went to my AI and asked it some pretty straightforward questions. In the UK, who do coroners work for? In the UK, coroners are independent judicial officers appointed and funded by local authorities. Interesting, local authorities. They work within the legal system, but they are not employed by the police, the government, or any specific political body. Okay. Who pays the local councils? Local councils in the UK are primarily funded through a combination of sources: council tax, business rates, government grants, fees, and stop right there. Government grants. Central government provides funding to local councils through various grants. Now we've got a connection between coroners and the government. I say, so are coroners not then linked to the government? Coroners in the UK operate independently and not directly linked to central government, although their role is part of the legal system, etc., etc., while they are funded and appointed by local authorities, which receive funding from a combination of council tax, business rates, and central government grants. If a coroner spoke out about a government or the Home Office, could they rightly believe that their position might be questioned? So if we're going to speak out as a coroner against the Home Office, let's say, or the British government, and we're going to request a public inquiry, might my job or my promotion prospects be in jeopardy? Remember, Rachel is the youngest coroner in the country. In the UK, coroners are independently fine, and their role is to carry out impartial investigation, fine, etc., etc., etc. If the coroner were to make comments about the government or the Home Office in the context of an investigation, especially if these comments were based on evidence or relevant to the inquest, i.e. criticising policies that may have contributed to a death, immigration policy via the Home Office maybe, could that be something that contributed to Tom Roberts' death? Absolutely it could. Their duty is to the facts of the case and to ensuring that the cause of death is properly investigated. Brilliant. However, if a coroner were to make political statements outside their judicial role, or if their comments were perceived as overtly political or unrelated to their duties, there could be concerns about impartiality or professionalism. I then say, if a coroner were to speak out on the problems with immigration whilst believing that increased immigration is actually a Home Office policy, could they not expect repercussions from the Home Office? A little bit nuanced here, guys. What I'm saying is, if immigration was a policy of the Home Office, i.e. it was not a policy of the Home Office, i.e. the Home Office was not trying to stop immigration, it was trying to create more immigration, and we've got many reasons to believe this is the case, could they not then expect repercussions from the Home Office? Maybe criticising the fact that an immigrant was here and then killed one of our potential defenders of the nation, a young guy, 21 years old, called Tom Roberts, let's just say, in Bournemouth. If they were going to criticise the Home Office policy that allowed the Afghan migrant into the country, could they not expect some kind of repercussions? Who knows? Maybe AI does. If a coroner were to speak out publicly about immigration, particularly if they criticised it as a Home Office policy, there could indeed be potential repercussions, though it would depend on how and in what context these comments were made. And lastly, I say, could a young coroner believe, rightly or wrongly, that suggesting a public inquiry into the Home Office failures over immigration might make their position less tenable? I.e., if we're going to say that we require, or as a coroner, I recommend a public inquiry into the Home Office policy of immigration, could that be quite damaging to my career? What do you reckon? Hit the comments. Yes, a young or less experienced coroner might, rightly or wrongly, this is Rachel's first job, by the way, believe that suggesting a public inquiry into Home Office failures over immigration could make their position less tenable, even though coroners are independent judicial officers. The perception of political consequences can sometimes create concern, especially for someone early in their career. I'm going to leave it there because I don't want to judge no one, and I'm not judging anyone here. I just want you to understand that if you are going to criticize someone within your command structure, let's say, even though technically you should be independent, there may well be ramifications, especially if you're new in role, and especially if we're dealing with people under the Bonhoeffer theory and the Peter principle that might not be the brightest cat in the whole playbox. So what I'm saying is that Rachel may or may not, we cannot confirm or deny, as the coroner in this particular case, worry that her position might be less tenable if she was going to recommend a public inquiry into the Home Office. I'm going to leave it there, guys. You decide what you want. Hit the comments and tell me I'm wrong. I'd want to be wrong on this anyway. I'm more than happy. I'm just trying to bring you some facts. Hope you found it interesting. Tim Davies, Fast Ship Performance.